In the fall of 2024, a landowner in northern Argentina was clearing brush in an untouched woodland area when his chainsaw struck something solid. Concrete buried beneath layers of soil and overgrowth accumulated over 80 years. He paused, examined it more closely, and quickly contacted local authorities. What emerged was an underground wall concealed by decades of nature. Upon excavation by officials, they revealed a sturdy bunker embedded into a slope, comparable in scale to a spacious home and invisible from above. Within the initial room lay nautical maps from the German Navy marked April 1945, along with a wireless set, encrypted journals, and lettering on a steel cabinet identifying Corvette Captain Werner Hadlich of U-977. Hadlich led a U-boat that departed Kiel in March 1945, tasked with disrupting Allied vessels in the Atlantic. The craft turned itself in to Argentine forces on August 17, 1945, 3 months following Germany's capitulation. Interrogators from British and US services grilled him extensively, wary of his itinerary and the delay. Hadlich maintained he'd operated submerged throughout, oblivious to the war's conclusion. Skeptical, but lacking evidence, they let him go. Official Argentine documents list his death in 1982. Yet this site narrates an alternate tale. The landowner had unearthed a 1940s-era operational headquarters, provisioned for extended stays, and evidently crafted for utmost secrecy by someone evading detection. For details on what probes revealed about Hadlich's true objectives and the reasons British agents pursued leads on him for decades, give this a thumbs up. Your support uncovers more overlooked World War II tales. And if you're new here, hit subscribe to catch our deep dive into the facility's remaining secrets. Let's return to April 1945, when a U-boat leader got verbal directives off the record. To grasp how Hadlich wound up in Argentina, consider the Reich's desperate final days. At war's close, Werner Hadlich was 34, a seasoned sailor who'd enlisted in the Kriegsmarine in 1929. Since October 1944, he'd skippered U-977, a Type 6C vessel. His service history was routine: 2 verified merchant sinkings, a handful of convoy skirmishes without verified successes, and primarily escort duties in the Norwegian waters. No standout heroics or ideological fervour. His dossier noted him as skilled in mechanics, obedient to commands, and steady in crises. The ideal pick for perilous submarine runs, though hardly front-page material. Launched in March 1943, U-977 joined the 13th U-boat flotilla in Trondheim, Norway. By spring 1945, it had logged 7 patrols, largely without incident. The 42-man team, averaging 27 years old, consisted mostly of hardened Atlantic fighters who excelled at silence, dodging escorts, and enduring scant supplies over long voyages. The sub was dependable rather than cutting edge, a dependable veteran unscathed after 6 missions. On March 24, 1945, Hadlich got clearance from Kiel for a routine commerce raiding stint in the northern Atlantic, routed through standard protocols and approved by the BDU staff. However, some sailors later confided to questioners that Hadlich accepted a separate, undocumented instruction hand-delivered by an unfamiliar officer. Hadlich post-war denied any such thing. Clues point to the contrary. The front was crumbling. Soviets neared Berlin by 40 miles. Western forces forded the Rhine, and the Kriegsmarine clung to under 60 active U-boats, many trapped in Norwegian inlets or Baltic harbours. Grand Admiral Dönitz braced for defeat. Still, pockets of Nazi leadership plotted alternatives: prolonging resistance, bolt holes, concealed resources, survival amid the impending occupation. U-977 sailed from Kiel on March 24th, loaded for 12 weeks' endurance, with the men briefed on targeting convoys near Newfoundland. It steered northward via the Kattegat, then westward across the North Sea. Familiar path, usual tactics. April 2nd brought word of Hitler's demise over the airwaves. May 8th confirmed Germany's total capitulation. Dönitz mandated all U-boats to surface, broadcast locations, and head to enemy bases. Unlike many, U-977 disobeyed. Unbeknownst to Hadlich's team, their leader had resolved against yielding to the British or Americans, with an endpoint pre-selected long before by planners envisioning endless conflict. What Hadlich stowed in the forward torpedo bay, sealed in waterproof cases, omitted from all records, would account for why British spies hunted him relentlessly over the following 4 decades. On May 10, 1945, 2 days post-Germany's Sur, while operating submerged about 200 miles west of Ireland, U-977's commander, Hadlich, gathered his team and presented them with a decision. They had the option to surface, contact the Royal Navy, and endure years in a POW camp, or press on southward, remaining underwater as much as feasible, aiming for Argentina. He allowed them 60 minutes to choose. 16 sailors opted to give up. That evening, Hadlich set them adrift in an inflatable dinghy along the Irish shoreline. The other 26 members chose to proceed. What followed ranked among the most extended underwater voyages in U-boat annals. Hadlich steered the vessel southward across the Atlantic, diving deep by daylight and emerging solely after dark to replenish power and freshen the air. They steered clear of major shipping corridors, observed total radio blackout, and navigated unlit. The strategy involved shadowing Africa's shoreline, evading routine patrol zones, and traversing the South Atlantic amid the southern winter, when enemy aerial surveillance slackened. The Odyssey lasted 66 days, spanning more than 7,500 nautical miles, largely submerged or using the snorkel. By July, supplies dwindled. Meals shrank to 1 daily, relying on tinned goods and desiccated fish. Water allotments dropped to half a litre per person each day. The sub's atmosphere grew rancid, laden with exhaust and sweat. Humidity sparked skin ailments in several hands. The lead mechanic flagged issues with the engines from subpar fuel, yet they dared not linger on the surface for fixes. On July 12th, they passed the equator. Late that month, off Brazil, they submerged through the day and crept forward only under cover of night. Hadlich relied on basic navigation during short-scope checks of shore features. Lacking current maps, forecasts, or data on enemy patrols, they proceeded intuitively, desperate to enter Argentine territory before exhausting fuel or stores. British agents later scrutinised the sub's journal following Hadlich's capitulation, revealing meticulous routing and resource handling. Each turn was logged, every recharge tallied, though omissions appeared, 3 pages ripped away, others bearing traces of later additions. The ink varied subtly, the script overly precise. Clearly, elements had vanished from the chronicle. Hadlich stayed silent on the matter. On August 17, 1945, U-977 broke the surface in Mar del Plata harbour and alerted Argentine officials. The men were drained, gaunt, and plagued by health woes. The craft was grimy, fuel-starved, and run down mechanically, yet seaworthy. Hadlich broadcast that he'd been underwater since May 10th, oblivious to the capitulation directive, and now sought to hand over the vessel to Argentina. This was deliberate deception. The log confirmed receipt of the order on May 8th. Within 2 days, Argentine forces detained the personnel and seized the sub. Soon after, US and British spies descended on Buenos Aires, insisting on entry. They harboured fears that U-977 had ferried top Nazis southward. For 6 weeks, they grilled Hadlich to unravel his account. He held firm, denying any extra crew, treasure, or papers. Just his team dodging imprisonment. The searchers combed every nook, scanned the hull with rays, and uncovered zilch, They let him go in October 1945. Unbeknownst to them, Hardlich had linked up with a local military man who aided his evasion into the countryside, and the illicit load he'd safeguarded pre-surrender was already en route inland. The mystery of its destination stayed buried until 2024, when a Buenos Aires forensic auditor spotted anomalies in unsealed 1946 Argentine financial documents. The probe into U-977 wrapped up in November 1945. The Allies deemed Hadlich's tale credible, a defiant skipper who bolted instead of yielding, unburdened by fugitives or illicit goods. The sub was sunk off Mar del Plata in January 1946. Hadlich secured Argentine status and faded from spy radars. The British harboured doubts but lacked proof for action. His escapade lingered as a minor note in Nazi flight narratives. He fueled the legend himself with a 1952 book, U-Boat 977, 66 Days Underwater, portraying himself as a neutral captain who spurned British submission over execution fears. It enjoyed fair sales and bolstered his facade. He detailed the trip vividly, but omitted any hint of freight, riders, or covert commands. Doubters persisted. In 1947, MI6's David Thornton assembled a dossier on dubious U-boat landings in Argentina, highlighting that U-977's ballast, upon arrival, mismatched its fuel usage. Inspection logs indicated otherwise. The vessel ought to have floated higher on the waves, yet images depicted it low in the water, hinting at substantial loads in the front sections. Thornton urged ongoing monitoring of Hadlich. The document was archived and soon overlooked. Hadlich resided unobtrusively in Buenos Aires for 30 years. He served as a consultant for an Argentine maritime firm, wed a woman from the area in 1954, and fathered 2 kids. He occasionally spoke with naval scholars, but dodged in-depth inquiries about his voyage. Regarding the ripped entries in his journal, he insisted they were ruined by salt water. On the topic of the 66-day crossing, he attributed his endurance to resolve and fortune. He stuck consistently to his account. In 1978, a reporter from Germany, Klaus Fischer, journeyed to Argentina to question elderly escaped Nazis. He encountered Hadlich, aged 67 at the time, and probed whispers that U-977 had carried files from the Reich Chancellery. Hadlich chuckled, replying, "If I'd transported Hitler's confidential papers to Argentina, would I be residing in a modest 2-room flat?" Fischer took him at his word. The piece appeared in Der Spiegel, after which Fischer pursued different topics. Hadlich passed away in May 1982, with the cause listed as cardiac arrest. His death notice in the Buenos Aires Herald portrayed him as the final U-boat leader to capitulate. His relatives arranged a modest burial service. No representatives from Germany showed up. His belongings included a simple retirement stipend, basic furnishings, and a steel chest that his spouse contributed to a nearby nautical archive. The institution inventoried the items, sailor attire, awards, snapshots, and tucked it away in storage below ground. Nobody scrutinized it thoroughly. For years, Argentina's countryside guarded its mysteries until the woods yielded a clue. The estate where the outpost surfaced switched owners 4 times from 1945 to 2024. Back in 1946, a shell corporation based in Montevideo, Uruguay, acquired it. The entity listed no owners and shut down in 1952. By 1953, the terrain went to an Argentine farming group, which turned it into pasture for livestock. In 1978, a timber operation bought it and sowed pines over much of the land. In 2019, it transferred to its present holder, rancher Sebastian Morales. The spot was isolated, situated 320 kilometers northwest of Buenos Aires, in the Rolling Hills region close to Pergamino town. The closest asphalt highway lay 8 kilometers distant. The holding spanned 450 hectares, largely wooded and meadowland. No edifices appeared from overhead views. Official maps showed no services extending there. It held value solely for logging and herding, an ideal spot for concealment. In 1998, scholar Dr. Eduardo Sanz released a volume on Nazi holdings in Argentina. He had devoted 5 years to sifting through newly public Argentine spy dossiers and conversing with aged informants. A section explored tales of refugees constructed in the 1940s for fleeing German military figures. Sanz pinpointed 12 potential sites via land deeds that flagged odd buys by outsiders. The Pergamino parcel escaped his roster. The proxy firm's filing had masked its Teutonic links. Advances in tech arrived. Orbital photos entered public domain. Analysts could inspect distant terrains from desktops. In 2015, researchers at the University of Buenos Aires deployed historic overhead shots to hunt concealed edifices in zones linked to Nazi hideaways. They spotted various derelict sheds and shelters, though all were already documented. The Pergamino area resembled barren woodland. The outpost's sturdy concrete top, blanketed in earth and plants, evaded detection from the sky. At the same time, UK spy records on U-977 stayed under wraps. In 2003, the British National Archives unveiled certain papers per the 50-year protocol, but the juiciest ones on Nazi webs in South America remained locked. Experts glimpsed mentions of active probes and figures of note in Argentina, though identities and spots were blacked out. Hadlich cropped up in multiple files, each tagged with a remark, "No fresh intel." Individual, past 1982. An unknown fact to all but a tight-knit group was Hadlich's regular trips to the Pergamino land, twice yearly from 1946 right up to his end. He drove the 8 hours from Buenos Aires, lingered a few days, then headed back. His kin assumed he was advising transport outfits in the provinces. Reality diverged sharply, and it lingered entombed in a slope, secured by cement and metal, poised for some lumberjack to breach it unwittingly with a power saw. Upon breaching the outpost in September 2024, the discoveries in the central vault tied straight to 3 additional Nazi installations unearthed elsewhere in Argentina, exposing a covert system previously unsuspected. On September 14, 2024, Sebastian Morales contacted Pergamino authorities, reporting what seemed a Teutonic shelter. The officers then notified the regional administration. Authorities notified the federal police. By September 16th, specialists from the National Institute of Anthropology and History had arrived at the scene, bringing ground-penetrating radar and tools for digging. Dr. Lacia Vargas, the primary archaeologist in charge, deployed a GeoRadar Pro 16 unit designed to map underground features down to 10 metres. The first scans exposed a facility spanning approximately 35 metres by 18 metres, carved into the slope and fortified with concrete barriers. This setup featured no fewer than 6 linked spaces joined together via hallways. The overhead structure included 1.2 metres of concrete overlaid with 2 metres of dirt. The opening that Morales had unintentionally uncovered was secured by a steel barrier, fused closed from the interior side. Crew members applied a plasma cutter to force it open. On September 19th, Dr. Vargas, along with 2 team members, stepped inside, equipped with breathing masks and battery-powered lamps. The atmosphere within was stuffy, but adequate for respiration. Its air circulation system proved ingeniously constructed. The initial space served as a shared area, outfitted with tables, seating, a firewood heater, and storage racks. Dust blanketed every surface, yet nothing appeared damaged. Mounted on one wall hung 3 framed images of German warships. Midway through a chess match lay the board on the table. The adjacent room functioned as a hub for signals. A tall frequency radio setup rested on a work table linked to an antenna pole camouflaged as a withered tree on the surface. Beside the equipment were encoded records spanning August 1945 through March 1946. While the encodings followed routine maritime protocols, the core messages remained scrambled past basic fleet encryption. Dr. Vargas documented it all photographically and requested input from code-breaking professionals. The following area held stockpiles, boxes of preserved meals, health kits, gasoline barrels, and cases of munitions. These provisions bore German armed forces markings, including Wehrmacht and naval insignias. One box held paperwork such as employee records, instruction guides, and sailing diagrams. A separate one stored cash, Argentine pesos, American dollars, and Swiss francs, amounting to roughly $180,000 at 1945 rates. Yet another box revealed a surprise: geological charts of Patagonia, annotated with ore reserves. The next section acted as sleeping quarters, containing 8 berths. Belongings lingered in storage trunks at the bed's ends: apparel, hygiene goods, reading materials. A label on one trunk read KKKPW Hadlich. Within it lay formal sailor attire, an Iron Cross decoration, and a German-language diary. The entries spanned August 1945 to February 1946. Dr. Vargas managed it carefully with protective gloves before sealing it in a preservation pouch. The fifth space, which Dr. Vargas afterward termed a strategy area, had walls lined with charts of South America, including Argentina, Chile, Paraguay, and Uruguay. Markers indicated precise spots, with lines linking them to imply paths or connections. A workstation held schematics and building designs for comparable installations. Maps highlighted at least 11 additional sites. Certain ones aligned with documented Nazi outposts, while others were unfamiliar. The final room remained secured behind a robust steel panel fitted with a dial-based lock typical of secure depositories. Experts summoned a lock specialist on September 23rd. Cracking the device required 6 hours. Their discovery inside reshaped the whole probe. This secure vault sheltered 23 airtight metal cases, each labelled with an ID number and an imperial eagle emblem from the Nazis. When examiners pried open the initial case, its contents clarified the British persistence in pursuing Hadlich. Federal officers cordoned off the area and summoned agents from the National Intelligence Secretariat, Argentina's domestic spy organisation. An initial dig of historical interest had escalated into a critical issue for state protection. The metal cases underwent meticulous extraction and relocation to a fortified site in Buenos Aires for examination. Dr. Vargas collaborated with a group encompassing code decipherers, financial investigators, maritime scholars, and security evaluators. They unsealed the lead container on September the 27th. It held paperwork, more than 400 sheets of printed summaries, personal annotations, and command directives entirely in German. Every item carried the classification Geheime Reichssache, denoting confidential imperial affairs. The oldest files dated to March 1945, the most recent to April 30th, 1945, marking Hitler's death. An initial assessment showed coverage of monetary shifts, property relocations, and evacuation strategies for vital figures. Multiple pages displayed endorsements from senior SS leaders. Dr. Hermann Wolf, an authority on German historical records focused on the Nazi era, joined as an advisor. He scrutinized the materials over 3 weeks, confirming their authenticity. The paper quality, ink composition, typing styles, and endorsement verification all corresponded to verified 1945 Reich Chancellery and SS archives. Their importance stemmed from the details. Far from miscellaneous files, they formed components of an organized scheme to create what Wolf labelled continuity frameworks. concealed systems to aid escaped Nazi officials, acquired Hadlich's diary, which Dr. Sofia Ramos, a linguist from the University of Buenos Aires, translated. In it, he detailed his landing in Mar del Plata, the questioning by Allied agents that followed, and his eventual freedom. Beyond that, it recounted encounters with German exiles in Buenos Aires, who aided him in setting up the Pergamino site. Entries noted shipments received on schedule and supplies obtained according to guidelines. On February 14, 1946, Hadlich noted, transfer finalized, records stored, duties completed. Dr. Carlos Mendez oversaw the cryptography group analyzing the radio logs. Basic encoding followed naval norms, yet the core communications employed an extra layer of coding. Mendez identified it as an altered Enigma system relying on a daily updating codebook. Deciphering without that key could span decades. However, one metal box revealed an unexpected find: a full Enigma device with rotor configurations and code sheets covering 1945 to 1946. Armed with the codebook, Mendez's experts decoded 87 transmissions from the Pergamino facility dated August 1945 through March 1946. Destinations included spots in Paraguay, Chile, and Argentina, precisely the sites pinned on those wall charts. The dispatches dealt with logistics, assets moved without issue, payments dispatched per plan, papers safeguarded. Overall, it formed a web of contacts linking various hideouts and escape groups throughout South America. Meanwhile, the Financial Forensics Unit reviewed banking records, uncovering remittances from Swiss institutions to Argentine holdings from 1945 to 1948. These summed to more than $12 million in 1945 dollars. The beneficiary firms were fronts that snapped up real estate in Argentina and adjacent nations, such as the Pergamino property. A number of these sites had surfaced in earlier probes as Nazi bolt holes. Others emerged as fresh leads. Among the papers, one file drew special notice: a printed roster of 47 individuals, each paired with sites and timelines headed __2__Dr. Wolf checked the names against documented Nazi escapees. 12 aligned with figures verified in South America post-war, 8 linked to presumed runaways who vanished. The other 27 were unfamiliar. Deeper digging exposed many as rank-and-file SS members, Gestapo operatives and Abwehr spies, precisely the sort equipped to run an underground system. Maps from the vault's geological files added depth, highlighting ore reserves of tungsten, titanium and uranium in Patagonian areas. Accompanying notes explored extraction and production potential. The message rang true. This exceeded mere evasion routes. It signalled bids to build a financial foundation for possible resurgence. Delusion or determination, the groundwork proved thorough. Tangible items backed the written evidence. The vault's munitions featured cartridges for MP-40 submachine guns and Luger sidearms, typical Wehrmacht gear. Tests indicated some had been discharged, with scars on the hillside range's walls confirming practice sessions. Provisions bore German labels, though invoices in a desk drawer traced purchases to Buenos Aires markets in 1945 to 1946. Provisions clearly sustained the outpost for an extended period. Efforts to extract DNA from dormitory belongings included strands from a brush in Hadlich's locker, producing a partial profile. Matching it to his grandson, residing in Buenos Aires, verified his presence. Yet the remaining lockers held traces from at least 7 more people unidentified against current databases, but container number 23, labelled _3_ contained the key paper that connected all dots and validated long-held British suspicions after 79 years. Opened on October 18, 2024, with Dr. Vargas, Dr. Wolf and 2 officials from Argentina's foreign ministry watching, it held one item: a 16-page directive on Reich Chancellery letterhead, dated March 20th, 1945, bearing Martin Bormann's signature. Directed to U-Boat Command Special Units, it detailed Actionbrook Operation Bridge. It spelled out instructions for chosen U-boat leaders to receive confidential directives for conveying vital goods and key staff to South American points. Goods encompass secret files, monetary tools, and engineering details. Staff comprise spy handlers and support experts capable of building and sustaining hidden operations. The U-Boat We. They were set to leave in March and April 1945, just ahead of any interference from Allied troops in the harbours. Hadlich was chosen among 6 commanders for the mission. His directives focused on shipping records tied to SS monetary activities and details about spy contacts in South America. He needed to set up a safe relay station for communications and act as a waypoint for other escapees coming via alternate paths. The Pugamino site became known as Station Echo, forming part of an extensive web that stretched across Argentina, Chile, and Paraguay. Everything lined up flawlessly. U-977 had left from KE on March 24th, shortly following Bormann's directive. The inconsistencies in the vessel's ballast, spotted by British agents back in 1947, made sense once the metal crates were accounted for. Each one tipped the scales at about 40 kilograms, adding up to almost a ton of load in the front torpedo compartment. Missing entries in the submarine's journal aligned with the period when cargo was offloaded upon reaching Mar del Plata. Hadlich had scrubbed any traces of his haul and its destination. Those geological maps and factory blueprints served a backup purpose, creating financial independence for the entire setup. Experts in mining and manufacturing had been resettled close to the ore-rich zones. The scheme was bold, yet doomed from the start. The majority of those on the run were nabbed or perished before projects could gain traction. A handful who made it, including Hadlich, kept things running briefly until shortages and infighting tore it apart. Dr. Wolf's report wrapped up by calling Action Brooker an intricate backup strategy that saw only partial results. Out of the 6 submarines picked, just 2 made it to South America, U-977 and U-530. The latter turning itself in during July 1945. The remaining 4 met their end through sinking, seizure, or deliberate destruction prior to exit from Germany. The system sustained maybe 24 fugitives over 3 to 5 years, yet by 1950 nearly all outposts stood empty. The Pugamino outpost got locked down in March 1946, hinting that Hadlich had completed his task and relocated. The Brits' doubts proved spot on. U-977 had smuggled illicit goods and built a hideout system, though solid evidence eluded them thanks to Hadlich's caution. Argentine officials were either in on it or simply overlooked it, and the era's tech couldn't pick up on a concealed concrete bunker deep in the wilderness. It required 79 years plus a farmer's chainsaw to unravel the mystery. This breakthrough prompted a fresh look at other U-boat arrivals down south. U-530's skipper, Otto Vermuth, faced questioning too before being freed. His craft displayed similar ballast oddities. Officials in Argentina are now hunting for another outpost, perhaps in Patagonia, guided by map points from the Pugamino files. Come January 2025, the hunt persists. Hadlich's descendant, Klaus Hadlich, spoke out in November 2024. He shared, "Grandpa avoided war tales, sticking to his book's version. Once he passed, Grandma revealed his long battles with bad dreams. I figured it was from battles fought. Today, I see he bore a far weightier load." The Pugamino site now falls under protection from Argentina's National Parks Administration as a historic landmark. They've shored up and locked the entryway. While visitors can't enter freely, scholars may request clearance. Materials pulled from the location have gone digital and sit under review by a global group. Expect releases in 2026. The steel boxes, Enigma device and choice relics are on view at the Argentine Naval Museum in Buenos Aires. Titled The Last Mission, 977 and the Hidden Network, the display features site photos, document interpretations, and Hadlich's attire from his storage chest. The accompanying notes state, this outpost marks the closing act in Nazi Germany's bid to endure past its downfall. Though it crumbled, its presence underscores how dictatorial powers scheme for survival, right up to their collapse. Hadlich spent 37 years post-sealing before his end. He wed, started a family, and held down a regular position. Folks nearby viewed him as one more German arrival. Still, he made the 8-hour trek twice yearly to guard a truth forever hidden. His 1982 death took that truth under with him. Or it might have, were it not for a landowner clearing woods in 2024 for pasture. The Fax journeyed 7,500 nautical miles aboard a U-boat, lay interred in Argentine earth across 79 years, and emerged only because grazing land was needed. At times, the past lingers that patiently,